specialize in autoimmune skin as well, but I also work with depression, anxiety, gut issues, autoimmune diseases, etc., asthma, allergy, ADD, you name it. It's all basically the same causes almost, where it's some kind of breakdown in the body that has to be figured out. But I'm going to go over today some success stories and how to unwind disease, some really useful information that you can take right away and start doing yourself to help your own bodies heal. I'll tell you some of the testing that I use and just basically explain that your bodies have a tremendous ability to heal, and optimal health is not complicated, and I'm going to explain all about that. So looking forward to going through this. But this first slide here, I want you to meet one of my success stories. This guy's name was John. He had chronic psoriatic arthritis and severe joint and muscle pain, and you can see on the left side that is actually his thumb. And his hands were so debilitated. The bottom right of the first picture is actually about 4 or 5 months in. You can see he's starting to heal, but he had such chronic pain that he couldn't even tie his shoes. He couldn't do his woodworking. He was retired, but he loved to, build and beautiful woodwork. He couldn't do his hobbies, and he was just really just debilitated by the pain of it and the discomfort of it. And he was on prednisone, which is an immunosuppressant. Every time he had to taper off the immunosuppressant, he would just have a tremendous flare and it would just be unbearable. So you go on to the next one. I'll show you what happened with John. So you can see on the bottom, there is his recovery. He is now 95% free from psoriasis, and he could be 100% free, but he has a few things he likes to do that make it so that he's not quite there, but he's pretty close. But he is 100% pain-free and feels fantastic. And as a matter of fact, this has been a big source for me for referrals. He's referred several people to me, just saying, anyone who has a problem. He went from being very skeptical to being a big believer in functional medicine and telling everybody, oh my gosh, you have to do this. And his appearance changed so much. He actually lost 30 pounds in the process. His big belly, beer belly went away. So he feels fantastic, and he has a lot more energy and just wonderful, pain-free, off all his medications. And this was within 5 months. So you can imagine. Now, does everybody heal this quickly? Not necessarily. But some people even heal faster. It just depends on the person and what the issues are. So I'm going to show you some of the underlying issues ahead. So you can go on to the next one. But it's important to understand what your body has to deal with. So go to the next one, and you can see that a big part of the problem is we are malnourished. Food today has so many fewer nutrients than it did even just 30 or 40 years ago. And this is for various reasons. There's topsoil erosion. There's hybridization of foods. If you look at an apple today, they're huge, right? Well, they have the same root system, so they're not sucking up any more minerals and vitamins and nutrients than the old apples that were tiny. So you have to think of all that. When things are bigger than they are, it doesn't mean they're more nutritionally dense. So we have fewer nutrients, and not only that, we're eating a lot of refined foods, and we'll talk about that after, packaged foods that don't have really devoid of nutrients. We have toxicity at unprecedented levels. There are thousands and thousands of new chemicals introduced every year, a few thousand every year, and just so many that wreak havoc with our systems. And I'll talk more about that as well. And of course, we're very stressed from both a physiological standpoint, where some things are going on in our gut, or maybe we have issues that are causing physiological stress like mold or Lyme disease or all kinds of gut bugs, to psychological stress, especially now with COVID-19 being such a horrible source of stress for so many people, financial uncertainty and all kinds of issues there, and having social isolation, etc. And of course, we're infected. Some of us with COVID itself, others with things like H. pylori infections or viruses, all kinds of problems there. We're inflamed, which we'll talk about a little more. And also, a lot of people just don't realize how critical sleep is to their healing. And people like to stay up late and, watch reruns of Little House on the Prairie and lie on the couch and stay up a little longer, but you don't realize that this is really taking its toll on your immune system. But on the other hand, we want to thrive, grow, reproduce, be thin, be able to eat anything we want, feel fantastic, have lots of energy. And there is a real disconnect here, because what we're doing, the input is completely different from what we are expecting. So it just doesn't make sense. And so Mother Nature steps in and says, not so fast. That's not what, it's really your body's doing what it means to be doing in the environment in which you're asking it to live. So here are some of the main contributors to the immune system. And lifestyle is so huge. I mean, everything we do, if we're not getting out in nature, you know, if we're doing self-numbing, you know, drinking a lot of alcohol or smoking cigarettes, obviously these are big immunosuppressant activities. Not immunosuppressant, but it'll aggravate your immune system. And then the food we're eating, we're going to talk a little more about that. We talked a little bit about nutrient availability, how it's just not the way it used to be. Digestion is important. We say it's not important what you eat, but more importantly, what you are able to digest and absorb. And if you have low stomach acid or H. pylori or issues with pancreatic enzymes, or you don't have a gallbladder anymore, you're probably not digesting optimally. So these are all issues we look at. We look at environmental toxins, the environment and toxins, environmental toxins and toxins that we use in everyday products. I had no idea about this. I actually used to love to use, you know, makeup that I would buy in a department store, and I thought I was doing well buying my personal care products at Whole Foods because I thought they were safer, but in reality, they're really not. Very few of them are really, really safe. So that's another thing. And then genetics. We have a genetic tendency, some of us, we might have some genetic SNPs that cause us to store more toxins than others, but genetics aren't everything. And a lot of people think, oh, I have crappy genes. Well, that's just not the case. Your genes switch on or off depending on the lifestyle and all these other factors. And of course, immune function. So there are things that can actually boost your immune system, like vitamin D. Vitamin D is critical for keeping your immune system balanced, so your immune system isn't overwrought. It actually can bring it can act a little bit like an immunosuppressant to bring your immune system to a really aggressive immune system down. But we don't want to do too much vitamin D, because too much can really suppress your immune system to the point where it's not functioning. So, you know, you put yourself at risk of viruses and other problems. So you really want optimal level of vitamin D. And that's more like around 50 actually. But yeah, this can all really, everyone has a trigger of what kind of puts them over the edge. It can be any combination of these things, but once the trigger's pulled, it's full-blown autoimmune disease. So you can go to the next one. We're going to talk about the root causes. And these really vary so much from person to person. And I kind of wish they didn't, because it would be so much easier to say to everybody who has an autoimmune disease, this is exactly what you do in order to put it into remission. But the problem is that we all vary wildly. Our genetic makeup, what we can tolerate, everybody has a different lifestyle, everybody has different levels of toxicity. What can irritate one person can be very different from what irritates another person. You and I, Amida, could be exposed to the same amount of toxins, but I might be a champion methylator. I might be able to get rid of those toxins, and you might be struggling mightily because of it. So it really depends wildly from person to person. Other thing, sorry.
I'm going to say that also, in addition to the food that, of course, all of us know is toxic and other things, there's an emotional factor, like how all of us have been brought up. You know, there could be a trauma, a childhood trauma, or emotional burden that we are carrying. It could also be a factor. I'm just thinking, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that can be a big source of stress. As a matter of fact, one of my first journeys into healing my skin was I went to an author. His name is Ted Grossbart. This was years ago in Cambridge. And he had talked about how skin diseases are a manifestation of something really eating you up emotionally. And I thought it was really fascinating. I don't necessarily agree if it's like a little kid that from a loving family that gets an autoimmune disease, but certainly for a lot of people, they may have gone through some emotional trauma that's triggering their autoimmune disease. And there is some self-rejection there with autoimmunity. So there's a lot of psychological, especially people who've gone through traumas, there can be a lot of issues there. But it is super important to figure it out. So I look at all kinds of different things. I'm going to go over with you the things that I look for. And it's sort of like being a detective. I'm peeling the onion. I'm figuring out, okay, what is driving autoimmune disease in this particular person? And before I even meet with somebody, I have them fill out an extensive health history form and get their last 2 years of any annual physical lab work, because this really helps me to identify what's going on with the person and start the investigation. But as far as this immune system, diagram here, the number one job for the immune system is really that of tolerance. Most of the time, the vast majority of the time, we want our immune system to just tolerate our everyday experiences. But what happens is if there's really a threat, that's when you want your immune system to kick into high gear and counter that threat. But for a rich variety of reasons, the immune system can actually end up being either underactive or weak, where it's unable to tolerate or counter pathogens or the toxins or things like that we might struggle with. Or it can be skewed the other way, where it becomes really hypervigilant and overreactive, and it loses its ability to tolerate. And unfortunately, these two dynamics can actually coexist. You can have an overwrought immune system and have it be weak at the same time. It's sort of like my teacher likes to say, a cornered wounded dog. We can end up with this vicious downward spiral that really creates more and more inflammation and suffering and hypervigilance. So we have to look, the idea is we want to be somewhere in the middle where there's balance and wellness and tolerance. And that's really where we should be. But because of our lifestyle factors that we're going to talk about, we're either one way or the other when it comes to autoimmune diseases. So let's talk about the burden there. What's going on. You can go on to the next. So here's the big issue with the food. This is a big reason why we have autoimmune disease. And the problem we have today is that this is really what we're eating. I remember so many years I used to eat those lean cuisines. It'd be great to keep the calories down, right? Well, these have artificial colors, flavors, preservatives. Most of the foods have a tremendous amount of sugar, refined whole wheat or white wheat flour, and highly refined vegetable oils like canola oil or soybean oil. And so these are things that your body does not recognize. And I never really thought about it. I used to eat that Splenda all the time. That Splenda actually gives your body a little hit of chlorine every time you eat it, essentially. So it can really wreak havoc with your microbiome. And if you think about, if you were to eat a Swedish fish, okay, and you ever look at the ingredients on this, it's all artificial colors and flavors, really, and sugar. And so you eat one of those in your immune system, you can just imagine your sentinel cells in your immune system, the lymphocytes saying, what the heck is this? I don't know, it doesn't look like a food, should I respond to it? What should I do? And your immune system can get confused and it gets exposed to this day in and day out. And finally it just says, I'm going to attack this. It's just, something's not right here. This isn't food. So you have to look at everything that you're eating and look at the ingredients, and if they're unpronounceable, you gotta take them out of your diet. Now, the other issue is toxins, and I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking about this because this is an area that I'm very passionate about. You look at the number of chemicals that, especially in the United States, that are banned. There's only about 11 chemicals that are used in our everyday skincare products that have been banned. Europe's a little better about that. They ban a lot more, thousands of products actually, or over 1,300 anyway, toxic ingredients. But the problem is, once you put something on your skin, it doesn't take long at all for it to get right into your bloodstream. And it doesn't have the ability of your liver to filter it out first like food does, before it gets into your bloodstream. So it's almost more important to put on the products that are safe on your skin than it is even what you're eating. So a lot of people don't realize this. I didn't realize this, and this is a big part of my own journey with toxicity. I realized I had heavy levels of all kinds of toxic substances that I tested for and was able to figure it out. Nigel's saying, yeah, they still allow aspartame in the UK, and that's a real problem. It's unfortunate. But I also want to say sunscreens and cleaners that we use in our home, and even like flame retardants and things like that that are in our household products. It's a big problem. A lot of people are using hand sanitizer now. Well, you know, obviously it's important to use, but what's in it? Look at what's in that hand sanitizer. And I have a non-toxic hand sanitizer. If any of you are interested, feel free to look on my website or reach out to me, and I'm happy to tell you what I use if you're in the US. Shipping is kind of expensive to send it anywhere else. But on the top right, you can see one of the most insidious forms of toxicity that we have, and this is the use of glyphosate. Glyphosate is what's commonly referred to as Roundup, weed killer. And a lot of people don't realize that this is used on just about all genetically modified crops. They spray them with glyphosate, and this is an endocrine disruptor. It'll actually mimic estrogen, and it will also interfere with your body's ability to detox, even from the glyphosate itself. So this is a major catastrophe, really, and this is why I really am a huge advocate for organic food and non-GMO food. And also, people don't realize that wheat and oats and some other grains are sprayed heavily with glyphosate before they're harvested, and this is to dry them out. But it's a big issue, and it causes immune system dysfunction. The average woman is actually exposed to over 180 toxins every day from just what they're using in their cosmetics and their shampoos and their soaps and their lotions and you know, bug spray and sunblock and all the things that we're putting on our skin. You have to think about this before you just use it. These chemicals react with each other and can really wreak havoc with your immune system. There are over 200 toxins found in umbilical cord blood on average. This means they just sample random umbilical cord blood, and the moms are passing these toxins on to the babies who don't have the mature defenses that we have and the detoxification that we have. So it's super important, if any of you are moms or dads, to use non-toxic products on your children, and also you know, Johnson's baby shampoo. Sorry, I'm not going to single any particular product out, but man, you go look at the ingredients that's in there. Look up the ingredients and see what's safe. So we have to look at all these things and really be careful about what we're using. You can go on to the next one. The third element, so we have toxic foods, we have toxic toxins, and then we have stress. And you mentioned this yourself, Amida. Stress hormones impair intracellular defenses, and prime a stronger extracellular response. So we have this culture that just says go, 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 and do, and we can actually this can actually ruin your body's ability to metabolize stress hormones themselves. It burns through nutrients. It creates oxidative stress and oxidative damage, and your body needs to try to survive and repair. Remember, we talked about repair and relax and all that. So we're supposed to be able to be stressed in order to survive. If we were years ago chased by a saber-toothed tiger, we'd want to be able to run. We'd want that adrenaline going and the cortisol shooting up and being able to run away, right? That adrenaline, that immediate drive to save ourselves. But chronically being stressed, your body doesn't know the difference. It doesn't realize you just lost your keys and you're all stressed out because of that. It doesn't know the difference between that and being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. It's going to pump out hormones that are going to keep you in a chronic state of stress. So it's super, super important to do things like relaxation. actually, over time, stress impairs your digestion, not by just a little. If you eat a meal and you're all stressed out, it's like 80% less digestion going on and less absorption of nutrients. It also, stress will suppress the immune system itself and impair the detoxification. So there's both physiological stress and psychological stress, and these are both issues. So you really hit the nail on the head with trauma and stress, things that you have to take care of.
All right, should we move on?
Yeah, sure. So here's the summary. Crappy food, stress, and toxins. This is the recipe for autoimmune disease. And if you go on to the next one, yeah, and you can see some of these issues that we have that we already discussed. And so here's the recipe for autoimmune. It's the autoimmune square. We've got, we didn't talk about this, but we talked a little bit about genetic predisposition. Some of us might have genetic SNPs. I know I had genetic SNPs that were part of the issue, but not everybody has genetic tendencies to store toxins or have high levels of stress. But whether you do or don't, stress can lead to autoimmunity, but also leaky gut. And one of the worst offenders for promoting leaky gut or enhanced intestinal permeability is gluten. And that's found in wheat and barley and rye. And it's in sauces like soy sauce and barbecue sauce. And I know some people think it's just a big trend to go gluten-free, but if you have an autoimmune disease, the gluten is triggering zonulin in your system, which will lead to leaky gut and enhanced intestinal permeability. And that can lead to further food sensitivities, and it can lead to a hyper aggressive immune response. So we have to close that gap. And people think, oh, I'm about 90% gluten-free that have an autoimmune disease. And I say that's no good. It can't even be a crumb. And the people don't realize that the half-life for gluten is about 6 weeks. So you have to double that, 3 months to get it out of your system, the antibodies. And so gluten is really important, the elimination of gluten. Also dairy, I could go into the reason why, but especially homogenized dairy can cause leaky gut reaction as well. And then also grains. Some grains can mimic gluten in your system. It's molecular mimicry, it's called, and wreak havoc with your system. So I usually have my clients eliminate those 3 things for starters, and then avoid any of the triggers that we had, the toxicity, the crap food, all those things have to be removed. And sources of inflammation and oxidative stress. So all these things have to be taken care of, because that's the recipe for autoimmunity. If you undo this, your body will heal. It will. There are some tests that we do to figure things out, but you can go on to the next one. I can explain a little more about that. But basically, you put in what you need. You maximize the good stuff, the raw materials. Clean water is really important. Drinking water that doesn't have fluoride in it. Fluoride is actually a toxin. Maximize getting enough nutrients and vitamins through your food. Healthy fats. Not those plant fats, not the vegetable oils, but more like coconut oil and olive oil are going to be much less inflammatory. And then you want to minimize, take out what is harmful. So toxins. I didn't even talk about mercury. That's another toxin that is really devastating. It's one of the most toxic things that human beings can have, and a lot of people, especially my generation, have it in their teeth. So that's not to run out and get them removed, because you want to have that done responsibly, but that can be a big trigger for autoimmunity also. But infections, allergens, stress, trauma, viruses, all these things we want to minimize. And then we want to prioritize and really create an environment for healing. Lots of really restful sleep, laughter, stress reduction, getting out and exercising, breathing, and having meaningful relationships. So these are also important. But once we do that, we maximize, minimize, and prioritize, we're going to have health. If we fail to do that, you're going to be sick. It's almost as simple as that. And there's a lot more complexity in terms of figuring it all out. But I want you all to realize and take in that your body has the ability to heal. Now, whether you have if you have a really entrenched autoimmune disease, and let's say multiple sclerosis, and there's been a lot of damage to the myelin sheath, can you get 100% better? Maybe, maybe not. It just depends. Same with whatever issue you have with your skin issues or any other kind of, like, even a lot of people have Hashimoto's, that is the autoimmune thyroid disease. If there's too much damage to your thyroid, you may have to stay on thyroid hormone for life, but you can prevent other autoimmune diseases from happening. So you can go to the next one. And so I'm going to talk about functional medicine. And what functional medicine basically is figuring out the root causes of what's going on in somebody's system, and basically help addressing those causes overtly, and then, you know, basically allowing the body to heal. And this is what we do in functional medicine, and the outcomes are phenomenal. Lots of studies on how the outcomes have been even better than conventional medicine outcomes. But the labs that I use are everyday annual physical lab work, regular labs we call them, digestive function labs, food sensitivity labs, and some other ones, more organics, acids types of testing. So you can go to the next one. But regular blood work is really highly available. It's, you know, a lot of people, most people have like a CBC, a CMP. Vitamin D levels, as I mentioned, are really important. So I usually test that, or have people have it tested before coming to me. And then, you know, that we can glean so much information from within reference ranges. Even if everything on your annual lab work looks perfect and your doctor says looks great and signs off on it, we can still tell a lot of really good information and clues as to what might be driving your autoimmune disease, because reference ranges are a statistical average of 95% of the population. So if you look around you, are 95% of the people out there optimally healthy? So there's a lot of wiggle room in that reference range. So sometimes even the top third of a reference range is really not optimal. And people think, oh, I'm in the middle of the reference range, I'm fine. And it's just not necessarily the case, especially when it comes to something like thyroid function. But you can go to the next one. And so that's the stool test. I actually recommend for most of my clients who have autoimmune diseases. So you can get these, they're on different websites. You can order them yourself, and see like maybe a DNA assay type of test, like a GI map or a GIFX. Those are a couple of good ones where we can actually see what's going on in your gut. Are there pathogens? Is there an overgrowth? Is there an imbalance? What's your digestive status? Are you digesting your food properly? Are you getting it into your cells? Is there inflammation? Is there H. pylori? Are there parasites? Are there pathogenic species in there, or potentially pathogenic species? So we have to look at this test, and really you need to have somebody who knows what they're doing with this test, not just to go do the test yourself and try to interpret it, because there's really quite a bit to understanding this test. And it's taught at the school I went to, and the school that I'm a teacher for, the School of Applied Functional Medicine. If you're a professional, health professional, or wellness professional, or medical professional, you can go and learn how to interpret these tests and help people. But you can go to the next one. And then for a lot of my clients, I will recommend food sensitivity testing. And there's pros and cons to different food sensitivity tests. I usually start with something like an IgG, immunoglobulin G test. And it's just a blood spot test that you can do in your own home. Just kind of prick your finger and go. But it can tell me a lot of information of foods that you might want to eliminate for a little while, because even healthy foods can become triggers for autoimmunity when your immune system's overwrought. So we want to look at that as well. We can go on. And then I usually do either an organics acids test, or I'll ask somebody to get, I don't do the test myself. I recommend getting these tests, the organics acids test, Nutraval, and ion test, one of those. And it is the urinary metabolites that we're testing. We can figure out what's missing, and then figure out what to do about it. So I can figure out nutrient levels, what people might be missing. you know, what's going on with them, what's going on with the neurotransmitters. It even measures heavy metal toxicity as well, which can be a big driver for disease. So you can go on. So I'm going to show you some of the success stories. You can see more of them on my website, but if you go down, I want to just show you. So I mentioned Hashimoto's, that's autoimmune thyroid, and if you have a sluggish thyroid, everything's going to be sluggish. And this client of mine had Hashimoto's, but she also had fibromyalgia. She was in chronic joint pain. She had debilitating migraines, and she also had what I had, chronic urticaria. She had hives all over her body. So this woman was on Vicodin, Zantac, and antihistamine every day. As a matter of fact, she took 2 doses of Vicodin every day, and she would go lie in bed by noon every day and not be able to function. And she was a mom to 2 kids too, a wife and mother. So she really felt bad about her ability not to function with this. Well, after working with her, you know, we did some triage work, and her migraines went away pretty quickly. And within a few months, her pain symptoms started to dissipate. Her energy started improving, and she was able to, with the help of her prescriber, go off of the medication. So she's no longer on Vicodin. She was able to go off Zantac. She no longer has acid reflux. And now, as a side effect, and this is a big side effect of getting healthy, she lost 90 pounds, or I think 95 to date now. So, so that's another thing, is that people that are hanging on to weight, a healthy body doesn't hang on to weight like that. So there's usually imbalances. But I remember this woman is just like this big bundle of energy now. I got to meet her personally, which was really fun. I do most of my work online through Zoom with people all over the world, but she's relatively local, and I got to meet her, and it was so fun to see the transformation and how much better she's done. So this was probably about a year of work with her, and it's just so completely life-changing for her. So she's out of all her pain. You can go to the next one. So I work with a lot of vitiligo. That's the disease Michael Jackson had, where your skin depigments. And to date, I've probably worked with over 75 people who have that disease. And the nice thing about it is I've been able to put it into remission for the vast majority of those people, where they no longer lose their pigment, it stops. And then they even gain some of their pigment back, which is really fun. To see the repigmentation of their skin. If the melanocytes on their skin have not been damaged too much, they can achieve repigmentation. So this boy I worked with is in complete remission within 6 months. And there's another vitiligo one. I can show you the next slide. This guy also had it. But the thing is, this guy had some digestive issues and just wasn't feeling right, some depression and issues like that. And you can see that his digestive issues are completely gone. His pigment is so much better. Actually, he told me recently he has 80% of his pigment back now. And it's just brand new life, really. His skin he had both melasma with hyperpigmentation and vitiligo with loss of pigment. So really amazing difference there. But to you all, in giving you an idea of some of the drivers, and just know that your body does have the ability to heal. And if you are not a medical professional and aren't interested in learning functional medicine at least, or even if you are and you aren't interested, try to work with a functional medicine practitioner or coach that may be able to help you.